So first of all, I wanted to make a video to celebrate getting 100 subscribers. So thank you so much for all subscribing to my channel. When I started this channel, I didn't know where it was gonna go, and just the fact that like 100 people, I'm just gonna assume 100 people and assume that there's no bots involved or anything. 100 people liked the ideas that I'm sharing and my drawings enough to subscribe. So thank you so much for that. It's a big milestone for me, and it's a huge motivation to keep going. Being that we're at 100 subscribers, I felt like it was time to do a little state of the channel kind of thing. So when I first started this channel, I was going through a lot in my personal life. I had to leave New York and just be with family for an extended period of time. I left in October and I was unexpectedly away until January, and then my significant other left the country, and so we only saw each other for a couple weeks basically, and then he left the country, and then he's been away ever since February. So it's been a little bit chaotic in my life, and when I started this channel, I was just trying to be creative again, to reconnect with my creative spirit and have something to take my mind off of all of the things that was occurring in my life. And I do work full-time freelance as a storyboard artist, but when it comes to personal drawings and personal art, I stopped doing that a long time ago. Way back in high school was the last time that I was really taking illustration seriously, and that's when I was really making strides with committing to learn how to draw illustrations and studying anatomy and all this other stuff. I taught myself how to draw digitally with a Wacom tablet. I think my first Photoshop was like Photoshop 2, and then I got Photoshop 5 or Photoshop 7, and yeah, things just really took off from there. But then when I got to college, I decided to do fine art for my degree. I could have chosen to do illustration. All my friends were doing illustration at the time, and graphic design, and those were kind of seen as the more lucrative jobs in creative industries. But I have always been a little bit more of a risk taker in my life, and I at the time was really invested in oil painting and fine art. So that's the route that I went, and when I decided to do that, I made a really conscious decision to stop making illustrations, because at the time there was this strong bias against, like, if you're making fine art, then you're not making illustration. There's like a big boundary between the two things. So I didn't want to confuse what I was doing by still doing illustration and having that possibly leak into my fine art work. Like, I didn't want to risk that. And I don't know if that was the right decision. I was so young at the time, and I was just trying to fully commit to the path that I had chosen, and at the time it just seemed like that was the way to go. And now, fast forward through a lot of life and a lot of ups and downs and graduation and getting into the workforce, and also switching from fine art to filmmaking for a good few years there. All of this time passes, and now I'm reconnecting to doing the illustration again. I had a huge art block that I experienced when I was focused on fine art. And I should also mention that I went to one school first. I went to Pratt, and then I transferred to a different school. And the second school I went to was really, really intense fine art school, conceptual fine art school, and they really vilified illustration in a way that I had never experienced before. And that's a story for another time, but that's all to say that I kind of got art blocked at the second school that I went to, and I got to a point where I was really miserable making work. I had really harsh critiques. Nobody really understood what I was doing, and even if I wasn't doing the illustration, the digital illustration anymore, I suspect that some of my style and some of my approach was still coming through in my fine art. Like, I was still painting like representational paintings of real things, and there was a lot of people that had a big problem with that. There's even a professor that openly would say that painting is dead, that she didn't understand why anybody would be doing paintings nowadays, that paintings were something that was a relic of the past and no more. And she just really despised the idea of painting. And there were several students that were like that too, where like they believed that the only legitimate art that existed in the modern world was fine art, and that if you were painting and if you're using traditional mediums, then you weren't an artist. And I had people tell me to stop making art, to stop painting. I had people tell me that my paintings were pointless, and then using swears and other really negative phrases that I can't use on YouTube to describe my work. And it was just really harsh. And again, that's all something that I can talk about in another video, but I only bring it up to say that I got really, really blocked. And for a really long time, I stopped doing the illustration. Then I got into the filmmaking, and then from the filmmaking is how I got into the storyboard art. That's another topic for another video. But now, after years and years and years, even though I've been working as a storyboard artist, I've really just been drawing upon the skills that I had way back in high school. And I haven't really taken the time, even though I'm drawing constantly for my job, I haven't taken the time to really heal my personal creative process or work on personal art. I just really, for a very long time, have been looking at drawing and art making as a way to pay the bills. And my creative spirit really suffered and was like non-existent. It really got to a point where I couldn't remember. I had completely forgotten what it felt like to feel inspired and to feel motivated and passionate about making art, even though I was literally doing it as a job. And that sounds really bizarre, and maybe someday I'll have a better way of explaining that, but that's what happened. And so I was drawing storyboard art for several years, and I really made no progress. So I was kind of just coasting on the skills that I already had. Whereas when I am doing personal work, when I'm doing personal studies or personal illustrations where I'm really taking the time to figure stuff out, that's when my art gets better. That's when I gain new skills. I wasn't doing that anymore. I was simply getting by, sometimes squeaking by. Sometimes I was drawing stuff that I had no idea what I was drawing, but I knew how to make it look pretty. So I would just kind of squeak by, finishing these jobs. And I'll talk about this in another video. Geez, I'm saying that a lot in this video. But half of the job of being a storyboard artist in the work that I do, actually I would say more than that, more than half, maybe 80-90% of the job is dealing with people and dealing with clients and just making their experience working with you really positive, really productive feeling, just making them feel good. Making people feel good is so much of the job, and communication and just being pleasant. And then really what I've found in my experience is that the quality of the art kind of comes secondary. I'm not trying to put out like bad art, but what gets me more jobs is the interpersonal stuff. Anyway, that said, there was never any urgency to make my art better. It was good enough. It was good enough to do it as a job, to pay the bills, and that was fine. And I had gone through a lot of stuff when I was working in the film world, and so I kind of needed a little bit of a break from the grind. I'm based in New York City, and grind culture, I feel like, originated in New York City. And there's so many people that are just about, working until you can't move anymore and just basically having no work-life balance, really. So I was experiencing a lot of burnout from working in the film world and just working really long days and being on set for like 12 hours, 16 hours, sometimes longer. I think the longest shoot day that I had was like maybe 26 hours. It was ridiculous. So a lot of really, really wild experiences in the film world. So when the storyboarding stuff came around, I was very happy to just work from home, take a step back, reset my life a little bit, and just focus on, doing the work and doing work that I felt comfortable with. And I wasn't like pushing myself. I wasn't like pushing myself to get outside of my comfort zone anymore. I was just really, I needed that time to reset. Then fast forward to now, had all this stuff happen in my personal life, and I turned to art. And what I've been doing lately through this channel, which has been my main motivation to continue making and exploring and following my curiosity and trying to gain new skills again, this channel has really motivated me to give me like little goals, like to post and share my work with the world and see how people react to it, see what sort of comments I get, and see what is working and see what isn't working. And that's been really filling my cup, I guess, my creative cup. So I think this channel really started as like an escape in a way, and a way to process the difficult things I was going through and am still going through, but I'm not in the thick of it anymore. Now I feel like it's evolved to a point where I'm just really focused on reclaiming my creative spirit, like the creative motivation and the feeling of learning, like reteaching myself how to learn how to make better art. I'm really self-conscious of the art that I'm making, because I know that because I stopped making illustration and taking illustration seriously, like I just keep thinking to myself that if I had continued and just focused on doing illustration like all my friends were in college, if I had not gone the fine art route, and if I had just gone the illustration route, like I just keep thinking in my head, and I know it's not good to compare it to like a person that doesn't even exist, but I'm imagining myself having taken that path and how much better I would be at making illustrations, and what skills I would have, and what work I might be making and contributing to the world. And I can't help but feel a little bit of like, I hate to use the word regret, but like it is bittersweet. I know that if I spent all those years, instead of meandering around these different career paths and having a lot of like difficult experiences, if I had just stayed on the one path that I started with, just where would I be now? And so a lot of my self-consciousness, I think, in my recent videos is just coming from this realization and this recognition that I know that I'm not making work that I could be had I made different choices when I was younger. I don't know if anyone would relate to that, but I know there's mistakes. I can see so many mistakes, and I see my peers, and I see what amazing work they're making, like the people that I went to school with, again, like seeing how their careers have flourished. And I mean, I went to school with people who ended up becoming like very famous artists, like no joke, but like actual like world famous artists. And yeah, it's a lot to consider, but this has been really positive. This whole experience doing this YouTube and sharing my work online again after not sharing it for so many years has been healing. And I feel like every drawing session now, I'll come away from drawing feeling like a piece of me is coming back, feeling like I am having a thought that I haven't had in years and years. Have you ever just walked around or something, like you smell a scent that's from your childhood and it's just so familiar, and it just instantly brings you back to a certain place or a certain time, a certain memory? It feels like that. As I'm getting back into this drawing process, I'm having moments where I'm feeling like I'm back in it, and that's been a really healing thing for me. And I'm not here to like trauma dump or anything, but like I have been through like a lot of rough stuff in my life, and having this feeling of being able to reclaim a part of myself that was a lot more innocent, that was protected from all of the crappy things that happened later on. It's just been really a positive journey. So yeah, I just wanted to make this video to thank everyone for their support, and I'm hopeful that I will continue to stay on the path and continue to share my art and not let my perfectionist tendencies get in the way. I've made videos where I talk about perfectionism and how much I'm working on trying to get away from that and just try to continue making work, continue to put work out there and contribute to the world.